Hi, my name is Sam. I'm the owner of Professional Fleet. And today I want to talk to you about probably one of the most misunderstood services in our business. And when it comes time, 30,000, 60,000, 90,000 miles to do your fluid changes and flushes on your vehicle. Use your coolant, your transmission, and doing fuel services. The most misunderstood parts about it is what exactly are you paying for and what are you getting? And most of the terminology in our industry could be, for transmissions, for instance, transmission flush, transmission service, transmission drain and fill, transmission pan drop and change filter fluid and gasket, and all those things cost different prices, as well as the fluids that they take are different fluids from vehicle to vehicle. A lot of them take synthetic fluids now, not the old style fluids, was a non-synthetic fluid. And those synthetic fluids cost a lot more money. If they're not put back in the vehicle, it'll shorten the lifespan of the transmission, particularly by 50 to 100,000 miles. And the problem is, when the service is done, the car may have 60 to 100,000 on it, and then when the transmission goes out, it could be another 25, 30,000 miles later, when it should have lasted to 200,000 miles. And you have no way of knowing that, because as far as you knew, it got done, it was done right, and it should have lasted, must just went bad. May not be the case a lot of times. So I'm going to talk about more as to what exactly you're getting, what you're paying for, and what to expect from that service. So we'll start with the transmission one, for instance. A lot of the oil change places or dealerships and other repair shops don't have what's called a flush machine. They may just drop the pan, change the filter fluid and gasket, which will get you about 5 to 6 quarts of fluid of that transmission. And the transmission on average holds between 10 and 17 quarts of fluid. So you might pay between $65 and $100 for a transmission service, which is just a pan drop and 5 or 6 quarts. But you still have all the rest of the fluid in that transmission that you're mixing new fluid with old dirty fluid. So therefore you didn't really do a flush, you didn't change all the fluid, you only got 5 or 6 quarts at most out of there. And then you would have a transmission drain and fill. A lot of vehicles, just like the oil pan, when you change your oil, will have a plug in them that you take loose, you drain out whatever fluids in that pan, and then fill it back up again. Well, that will get you the same thing, around 4 or 5 quarts of fluid. You still have another 8 to 10, 5 or 6, whatever it be, left in there still. That mixes with the old stuff. So ideally, on a vehicle between 0 miles and 80,000, you want to get all that fluid out before it gets to 100,000 miles. That entails doing a transmission flush. And the whole point behind this is that the fluids will go bad between 60 and 80,000 miles. They no longer protect the transmission or the engine or whatever it is you're trying to flush out like they used to. So you want to change them before they go bad, not after they go bad. If they've already failed and they're already starting to lose the ability to lubricate and protect that part, then that part will start to fail or break down or go bad before it should. So you go to certain oil change places in town and they're going to call it a flush, where they may be just sticking a tube down in the transmission and sucking out or pulling out 4 or 5 quarts. They'll then add those 4 or 5 quarts back into your car, start it and run it, stick the tube down the tube again, suck out another 4 or 5 quarts, add it back to it. In the end, you may have only got 3 or 4 quarts of fluid that's in the 12-quart transmission that's been changed out. The other 8 quarts are still in there and they've mixed with your old fluid, pretty much defeating the whole purpose of doing a service on the transmission. So ideally, you got to figure out if you're getting a flush, a service, or a drain and fill, and you need to ask and be specific. How many quarts are you going to change? How many quarts does my transmission take? How many quarts are you going to put back in? And can I see a sample of it before and after so that I know it was done correctly? And the other thing is a synthetic fluid situation. You can call around and get 10 different prices on a transmission service or a fuel service based on what parts or what fluids are going back in your vehicle. Ideally, if it's a synthetic fluid, you want the synthetic fluid to go back into it. If you put a fluid that is, say, universal fluid or may not be synthetic anymore, it will break down faster, it'll cause failure to the part faster. So to get the proper fluids put back in the vehicle, it's going to cost more money. But at the same time, you know that when you left there, it's in better condition than it was when you brought it in, and you should be able to get another 30 to 60 or even 100,000 miles out of that transmission or the cooling system, whatever it may be. In addition to that, you can also do a flush kit, which may have like a flush chemical, and will have a protectant that goes back into it on top of that. and those range between $15 and $30 additional. So on average, you can expect to spend for a good transmission flush somewhere between $100 and $200 is not uncommon. If you're not spending $100 to $200 for it, you either are not getting synthetic fluid, you're not getting a flush kit, or you're not getting a flush at all. You're getting just a drain and fill or a service. So it's very important to know which one of those you're getting. The same applies to the cooling system. The same kit you can buy that will flush it out, put an additive back in to protect it like they came from the factory. They'll have a sealer and a protectant in it to make it last longer and protect the vehicle. And the point of doing the coolant flushes is just because the coolant tests good at say minus 34 degrees and it looks good doesn't mean it's protecting the engine. That coolant picks up metal shavings, aluminum, parts of gaskets, dirt, sediment in the system and gets circulated around at a very high speed and gradually breaks down the metal in the engine, breaks down the gaskets in the engine, which then creates leaks. Most vehicles, if the coolant flush is done every 30,000 miles, you'll never have a major coolant leak, never have a major coolant repair. Head gaskets don't go bad, water pumps don't go bad, radiators don't go bad. That's why we do these services, is to prevent the large parts that normally we find in these cars from going bad. So if the fluids are changed out every 30,000 miles to 60,000, you'll never have to worry about, 90% of the time, you'll never have to worry about having to replace an engine, a transmission, or a water pump, and these parts. So that's why we spend the $50 to $150 or more to do these flushes, because these parts that they protect cost thousands and thousands of dollars. So that's why we want to change these fluids out. And we want to make sure we know, are we getting a flush, are we getting a fill, or are we getting just a service? And you want to ask those questions, be very specific, and get them in writing. And if you know the transmission or the cooling system takes a certain amount of quarts or gallons of fluid, then you better make sure that that's what you got charged for and that's what got put back in the vehicle. And if they don't match up and you're not getting charged for say 17 quarts of fluid in a transmission, when you know it holds 17, you didn't get the full flush done. So those are kind of the questions you want to ask. The last thing we'll talk about is just fuel injection cleaning and fuel injection services. There's different kits out there, different services out there. You want to make sure that most of them are going to have an additive you're going to put in the tank, which will continue to clean the injectors and the engine and the valves of the engine out, and it basically will increase your fuel mileage, make the idle smoother, and make the engine last longer inside and create less drivability issues for stallings, for rough engine running, no starts, things like that can be prevented just from doing basic fuel injection cleaning. So you want to have one that usually goes to the tank and will clean out the car as you're driving it. You'll also want one that will go and run directly off of the machine itself, not the vehicle. And it will clean out the injectors, the fuel rail, the insides of the engines off of that machine. So you don't want something that just gets out of the tank and you drive away. That will not do a professional cleaning. You can expect to pay somewhere around $80 to $125 for a really good fuel injection service. And you'll notice a big difference between the two. If the service was done right, you'll notice an increase in fuel mileage, the vehicle performs better, you can go faster, the speed difference between acceleration will be much better, fuel mileage will increase as we stated, and like I said before, it makes the engine run better, it makes it last longer. So usually a good service will be done about every 1 to 3 years depending on how many miles you put in your vehicle. So you can expect to do a fuel injection cleaning about every 15 to 30,000 miles depending on driving conditions and driving habits. But those will prevent engine buildup, carbon in the motor, that type of thing. So I hope today you've learned a lot from this, and just learn to ask questions and find out what exactly you're getting for your money. Just calling around price shopping and getting 10 different prices and then going to the cheapest one will not do what you're looking for. You want to be very specific as to what am I getting for my money and why are you charging me this price for it. And then you'll know, you'll be more educated and you'll know what you're getting for your money.